Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. In just over 2 weeks' time, on the 9th of November, Justice Chandrachud will become the 50th Chief Justice of India. What sort of Chief Justice will he make, and what does his record as a judge suggest? Those are two critical issues which I shall discuss today with someone who's thought carefully about the matter, a former president of the Supreme Court Bar Association and one of India's most highly regarded lawyers, Dushyant Dave. Dushyant Dave, let me start by asking for your opinion of Justice Chandrachud as a judge. How do you rate him?
Well, Karan, let me first preface, this answer, because it's not easy to, evaluate a judge who's going to be Chief Justice of India for 2 years. You must, your viewers must understand what is at stake today. And then perhaps I will be able to better explain what is expected from Chief Justice Chandrachud. See, we are today at a stage, as everybody knows, which is extraordinarily, I would say, challenging times. This is a time when executive is all too powerful. This is a time when parliament and legislatures are willing to do whatever they want to do. For example, passing farm laws without a discussion, withdrawing them without a discussion, etc., etc., etc. This is a time when authoritarianism is really increasing day by day. This is a time when minority communities and vulnerable sections of society are at a receiving end. This is a time when democracy is, to my mind, under siege. This is a time when entire opposition is being targeted by the government in power by using, or I would say abusing, investigating agencies like the CBI, the Enforcement Directorate, the NIA, etc., to target opposition leaders. Not one leader from the BJP or their friends has even been searched, much less proceeded against since 2014 when Prime Minister Modi took over. These are all terrible signs for a vibrant democracy. And therefore, it is very important for us to understand that the only institution which can perhaps step in and try and stop this, kind of a erosion in our democracy is judiciary. And to that extent, the greatest of the institutions that is, in our constitutional mechanism is the Supreme Court of India. Therefore, at a time like this, the role of the Supreme Court is going to be extraordinarily important. It is going to be, I would say history will judge this country's institution by the role that Supreme Court is to play. I must also say that since 2016-17, when Chief Justice Thakur retired, since then, the Supreme Court has really going down and down and down. Successive Chief Justices have really not done much for the institution. I mean, in 72 days, Chief Justice Lalit has done remarkable work, but that's too short a time. Now, the Supreme Court has virtually ceded territory to the executive. And that is something which is very troublesome, because as a result of that, the human rights are not being properly protected. The fundamental rights are not being protected, and citizens are suffering because of the Supreme Court's apathy towards their plight. So in this context, the office of the Chief Justice of India assumes great importance, because the Chief Justice is not the first amongst the equal, but he is also the master of the roster. And as master of the roster, he has a power to constitute benches, and he has a power to distribute work to those benches. Now, what we have witnessed in last 7, 8, 10 years, 7, 8 years, 9 years, is that successive Chief Justices are giving select matters to their favored benches. And this is a very, very serious. As a result of that, the opposition states are suffering, opposition parties are suffering, and the rich and the powerful are getting away with all kinds of judgments in their favor. Citizens who really should get independent justice are not getting independent justice. Now, these are challenging things. For example, sitting of this special bench on Saturday and staying an acquittal is unheard of in criminal jurisprudence. I mean, heavens would not have fallen if those people alleged to be very bad guys were allowed to go scot-free for a week or 2 or 3. But Supreme Court constituted a bench on Saturday. And I would say that Chief Justice, whoever constituted, should have been careful in composition of that bench, because it's very important that justice must not only be done, but justice must appear to be done. And this is where the Supreme Court is singularly failing. I must say, large number of politically sensitive matters have been given to select benches. And I'm not very happy about that. In that context, Chief Justice Chandrachud's appointment assumes great significance. What is he going to do in next 2 years? Is he going to follow this practice?
Let me stop you there. Before we come to what he does in the next 2 years, against this wonderful background that you've given us, please give me your assessment of Justice Chandrachud as a judge. What is your opinion? What is your rating of him in terms of the judgments that he's delivered as the Supreme Court judge?
Well, I must confess that Chief Justice Chandrachud intellectually is a giant. There is no doubt about that. I mean, in terms of his knowledge of law, he is supremely good. He has a tremendous understanding of the law. He is a jurist. He is very highly educated. He is very well experienced. And he comes from a phenomenal, legal background. His father was Chief Justice of India for 7 years. So, as a jurist, as a judge, there is no doubt that Chief Justice Chandrachud, designate, possesses extraordinary qualities. And he has reflected those qualities by and large in most of his judgments. He is extraordinarily, I would say, liberal in interpreting the law. He is extraordinarily, forward thinking in interpreting the law. And he really takes the law to different levels, which is expected of a judge. To that extent, I would definitely give him full marks. And there is no doubt that he will really add to the jurisprudence, which is to be developed by the Supreme Court, because what the Supreme Court does is laying down the law. And that's where Justice Chandrachud will really excel.
Is there an other side to it? Your whole answer suggested as if, having praised him, there was another point you were going to make, but you never made it. That's the impression you gave. So I'm asking you clearly.
Well, look, I generally like to also see the other side of every judge. Karan, as you know, I'm a son of a judge. I respect judiciary. I, in fact, love judiciary. I have so much affection.
Let's come to the other side.
I must tell you, having said that Justice Chandrachud in politically sensitive matters has not risen to the levels expected of him. And take, for example, the judgment in Judge Loya's death case. All that I was arguing before him in the bench of Chief Justice Mishra, Justice Kanvilkar and Justice Chandrachud was that even if judge died of heart attack, as was claimed by the government, independent investigation was necessitated because subordinate judiciary is the backbone of India's judicial system. And if a judge had died in suspicious circumstances as claimed by the family, the Supreme Court had a duty to ensure that independent investigation was ordered. Justice Chandrachud wrote the judgment, and I must say it is a deeply disappointing judgment dismissing our prayer. Secondly, in many matters I have seen, for example, he sat with Chief Justice Keher and ordered NIA investigation in that Hadia's case, where that poor young girl, a Hindu girl had married a Muslim boy out of her own choice. And yet, High Court annulled the marriage for no reason at the instance of the father. And it came to Supreme Court. Ordering an NIA investigation in a love marriage was unheard of. Chief Justice Kher was wrong, and Justice Chandrachud should have stopped him. And the girl, I must say, brave of her to come back to the Supreme Court, and she embarrassed the judges to the hilt when she said, I am in love with this boy. I want to live with him. You do whatever you want to do. And judges were left with no option but to say that we accept this marriage. Now, there are many such instances where I would say Justice Chandrachud has, recent decision, for example, giving extension to Mr. Jai Shah, Secretary of BCCI, rejecting Chief Justice Loda's report. Now, when a Supreme Court appoints a man like Chief Justice Loda to advise it, the judges must accept it to the hilt. You can't then pick and choose. If you wanted that there should be no cooling period, you should have said for every association, state and main association. You can't say, only the BCCI secretary and the president will have no cooling period and rest of the Johnnies will have cooling period. So that was disappointing to me personally. I feel that Justice Chandrachud also has one little, I would say, lopside, and that is this, that he is extraordinarily conservative in tax matters and in criminal matters. He may grant bail to Arnab Goswami very readily, but on normal occasions, Justice Chandrachud is very conservative in granting bail. So I would say that a judge like him should realize that the criminal justice system is terribly flawed. And more often than not, the investigations are horrendous. Innocent people are being framed, and judges have to really be careful about, dealing with the citizens.
You mentioned there 4, if I may use that colloquialism, downsides of Justice Chandrachud. They are the Hadia case, where he supported what Justice Kher had ordered, which is an NIA investigation into a love marriage. You thought it was extraordinary and wrong. You talked about how Justice Chandrachud had given an extension to Jai Shah in contradiction to what, in fact, an earlier Supreme Court judge had said. You also spoke about his extraordinary conservatism in tax and criminal matters. But it's the 4th point that I want to explore a little further with you. You said, and I'm quoting your precise words, in politically sensitive matters, Justice Chandrachud has not risen to levels expected of him. And you said that his judgment in the Loya case was deeply disappointing. Are you suggesting that in politically sensitive matters, he gives more than necessary benefit to the executive, that he is hesitant to deliver judgments that would upset or annoy the executive? Is that the suggestion you're making?
Well, I must say one thing. For a judge who is so willing to expand the horizons of fundamental rights, for example, take his judgment in Puttaswamy, right to privacy. It's an extraordinary judgment. It's a beautiful expansion of this right. For a judge like him, who is willing to really read human rights so beautifully in his judgments on issues like decriminalizing Section 377, etc. These are issues on which he's fantastic, and therefore it disappoints me, I must say. I would, for example, say that even his, agreeing to the majority in Ayodhya case has disappointed me. I would have definitely expected a judge like...
Before we get lost in the Ayodhya case, and I'll come to that later, are you saying, because you didn't finish your sentence, therefore I'm repeating the first half, for a judge so willing to expand human rights, it disappoints me, I must say. What is it that disappoints you? The fact that he won't stand up to the executive? The fact that he hesitates to pass judgments that worry the executive?
No, the fact that he gives a greater leeway to the executive in such matters.
The fact that he gives greater leeway to the executive than you think the executive deserves.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because, Karan, you must understand, Supreme Court must be very, very strict with the government in politically sensitive matters. And unless the Supreme Court, tightens, its approach in these matters, the executive will get away with murder. And we don't want that.
let me quote to you from that incredible start in the first answer, where you gave the background of the circumstances in which Justice Chandrachud will become Chief Justice on the 9th of November. You said, the executive is all too powerful. Authoritarianism is increasing day by day. Democracy is under siege. And you added, these are all terrible signs for a vibrant democracy. You also said that the role of the Supreme Court and the role of the Chief Justice is extremely important in these circumstances, because only the court can stop what you call the erosion of democracy. But now, if Justice Chandrachud gives more leeway to the executive than should be given, he's not going to be the bulwark that will actually stop the erosion of democracy. He may well allow it to continue, because he frequently shies away, as you said, from taking a tough position vis-a-vis the executive. He may not be the Chief Justice we need in this challenging time. That clearly follows from what you said.
No, I won't agree completely to your statement. I wouldn't say frequently. He does sometimes. And that sometimes should be, according to me, zero. I would say, but let me say that every judge, many judges, for example, have risen when they become Chief Justice. For example, look at Justice Lalit. In 72 days, he has really surpassed expectations. Justice Ramna, from whom nothing was expected, also, to my mind, surpassed the expectations which were from him. He had a lopside, but he definitely did something good on the positive side. I would say Justice Chandrachud has a capacity to rise for the occasion, and time will tell us that he definitely has risen on that occasion. So I would not pass a judgment on his tenure to come today. I would only say that he has to be extraordinarily careful. He must watch in constitution of his benches. He must watch on allocation of matters. Listen, I can say one thing, that every judge is entitled to have his philosophy. No denying that. But if a judge is well known in holding a particular position, for example, if a judge publicly says that Mr. Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister, is my hero, and then that judge gets politically sensitive matters, I think then justice does not appear to have been done. And that's what bothers me.
I'm just repeating what you said in answer to my question. Will Justice Chandrachud be the bulwark that will stop the erosion of democracy? Because your own assessment that in politically sensitive matters, he does not rise to the levels expected of him would suggest that he won't be the bulwark, he won't be the judge we need. Your answer was not every time, but frequently. His judgments.
Not frequently. I said not frequently. I didn't say frequently. I said not frequently.
Okay, not frequently.
Sometimes.
Not every time, not frequently, but sometimes his judgments have disappointed you. And I will simply add that even sometimes is disappointing, because those are times when a judge is letting down democracy or justice or the people standing in front of him. With that in the background, let's come to some specific judgments. And I want to get your opinion as not just a former president of the Supreme Court Bar Association, but as one of India's most highly regarded lawyers, of the way Chief Justice Chandrachud has performed. To begin with, in cases like the right to privacy, decriminalization of homosexuality, the right to abortion, the right of women of all ages to visit Sabrimala, Justice Chandrachud has been considered a defender of the rights of the individual and of their freedoms. Do you believe that that reputation is well-deserved, or is it exaggerated?
I think it's very well-deserved. I will add to that list, cases of this short commission women officers in the armed forces. Justice Chandrachud has been, supportive of them and trying to give them full commission. Now, there is no doubt about the fact that he is extraordinarily intellectually giant, and he therefore can expand the law to really give right to life a beautiful meaning. And that's what he does all the time. So I would say that he definitely deserves a tremendous compliments. On cases like this, he deserves 10 out of 10. I mean, there are very few judges who have taken, like this in cases like this.
Let me bring up a second aspect of his judgments. He has very strongly defended the right of dissent, which, as you know, is a critical issue in Narendra Modi's India. In a lecture in Gujarat in February 2020, Justice Chandrachud called dissent a safety valve of democracy. He added, and I'm quoting him, the blanket labeling of dissent as anti-national or anti-democratic strikes at the heart of our commitment to constitutional values and the promotion of deliberative democracy. Now, my question is this: do these views make Justice Chandrachud unique and set him apart from other judges? Or is this a commonly held view by all judges? Is he unique, or is he simply sharing a view other judges hold as well? Which of the two?
See, he is definitely unique. There is no doubt about it. I mean, he is in terms of sheer knowledge of law and interpretation of the law and take expansion of law. He's definitely unique. But the platform that he spoke on, that you referred to in 2020, was the platform which is just Chief Justice P.D. Desai Memorial Lecture Series. I knew Chief Justice P.D. Desai as a young lawyer in 1978 to 1982 when I was practicing in Gujarat. He is one judge. I have never seen a judge like him since then. That was a judge who had a zero tolerance for violations of fundamental rights, constitutional rights, legal rights, and he did not care a damn about the executive. Now, that is the kind of a judge which we need. I'm not sure, Justice Chandrachud spoke on that platform, but I'm not sure whether Justice Chandrachud, I can say, is of the same mold as Chief Justice P.D. Desai was.
As you said, Chief Justice P.D. Desai didn't care a damn about the executive. Those were your words. And you hope that as Chief Justice of India, Justice Chandrachud will follow that example and not care a damn about the executive. Justice is the important thing, not the sensitivities and sensibilities of the executive. Let me come to a third aspect of Justice Chandrachud's judgments. He's taken a very strong stand on the cavalier way people are arrested and then held in detention. In the Muhammad Zubair case, he said, and I'm quoting him, arrest is not meant to be and must not be used as a punitive tool. In another instance, he said, deprivation of liberty, even for a single day, is one day too many. Now, these are clearly views and positions that all judges should hold. But in the special circumstances that prevail in Narendra Modi's India, how special is Justice Chandrachud for holding these views?
Well, I must say that today, Supreme Court has many justices who are fiercely independent. I wouldn't like to name them, but there are many. And my respect for them goes, up every day. We have seen this powerful dissent by Justice Dulia in two cases, in Idgah ground case and now in hijab case. It's extraordinary for a junior judge to hold a dissent sitting in a bench of two and to tell the senior judge that I am not in agreement with you and I will give my separate order. So we have many such judges who are really very, very good when it comes to protecting the citizens. I really wish that every judge of the Supreme Court was like that. Okay. I really wish every judge had a zero tolerance of the infraction of fundamental and human rights by the executive, and protect the citizens. That's not what is happening. And that's where the judges are responsible, because it is the collegium system which really brings up these judges to the Supreme Court. They must, when the collegium sits, they must therefore decide what kind of judges we want to bring. Judges who will uphold the constitution or judges who will, lean in favor of the executive.
Now, in some quarters, Justice Chandrachud has got a lot of credit for publicly refuting judgments delivered by his father when his father was Chief Justice of India. I'm referring to ADM Jabalpur, which Justice Chandrachud the Younger called seriously flawed. I'm also referring to the fact that Justice Chandrachud the Younger was part of a bench that overturned his father's position upholding the criminalization of adultery. From the judicial point of view, how significant is it that he overturned or disagreed with his father's judgments? Or is that something you expect of a judge and the emotion that may lie in the relationship between a father and a son is irrelevant.
I think anybody who understands and respects law would have said that ADM Jabalpur was the most horrendous judgment in the history of India's judiciary. So I think Justice Chandrachud has done what every one of us would have done. I have no doubt that Justice Chandrachud's son, who is also a brilliant lawyer, will someday critically examine his own father's judgment. So I mean, it's nice. It's really nice that Justice Chandrachud found that his father had committed an error. Nothing wrong about it. He's examining him as a judge. He's not examining him as a father.
Absolutely. So far, I have cited 4 or 5 examples of judgments or a series of judgments delivered by Justice Chandrachud, which have got praise from people. And I've got your confirmation that that praise is merited and deserved. I want to now touch upon a judgment that did not get praise across the board. I'm talking about the Ayodhya judgment, and I'll add for the sake of the audience that many people believe that Justice Chandrachud was perhaps the author of it, although that's by no means confirmed. Perhaps the most troubling part of this judgment is that after calling the demolition of the mosque an egregious violation of law, it ended up giving the land on which the mosque has been built and has stood for centuries to the very party guilty of violating the law. Is this a bit of a black mark on Justice Chandrachud's record? He was a prominent member of that bench, and as I said, some people believe, although it's not confirmed, he wrote the judgment.
I think Justice Chandrachud has done something perhaps even more serious an error than this. In that judgment, he upholds the constitutional validity which was already upheld, but he says that the law which was brought by the government in 1991, which maintained the status quo of all religious places. I forget the exact name of the law, but which maintained the status quo of all religious places as of 1947. That law was a good law. Now, having said so, on behalf of the, Constitution bench, having said so, and its validity was upheld earlier by 5 judges, Justice Chandrachud in Gyanvapi mosque case did observe that there is nothing wrong about doing a survey. Now, it is really shocking for a judge to say that there is nothing wrong, because if a status quo is to be maintained, you don't do exercise in futility. That gave some kind of, I would say, it has sent shivers down the spine of the minority community. What do you want to do? You want to open up every mosque in this country? That law in 1991, which I think was brought, was a beautiful law that really said that except Ayodhya case, every other contentious, religious place of worship will be maintained for both Hindus and Muslims.
Can I interrupt and clarify for the audience what you're talking about? It's a comment made by Justice Chandrachud in May this year about the Places of Worship Act. He said, and I think I'm quoting correctly, but I'm doing it from memory. He said, it does not permit a change in places of worship, but you can still determine their character. And many people felt that by interpreting that the character of a place of worship can still be determined, Justice Chandrachud had opened up a troubling can of worms. Because if you determine the character to be other than what it has been perceived and accepted to be for centuries, then you're undermining the closure the Places of Worship Act brought. This is why it's opened a troubling can of worms. And this is why you say it sent shivers down the spine of the minority community.
I won't call it can of worms, but I certainly will say Pandora's box. I think, Justice Chandrachud, Supreme Court, in fact, should have said, put a full stop right there on Gyanvapi case and every other case. We are a secular nation. What Aurangzeb did, 500 years ago by force, we are wanting to do it by judicial force. What is Ayodhya's judgment? Ayodhya's judgment by the Supreme Court, like the Turkish Constitution Court, which has allowed, that famous mosque,
Hagia Sophia.
Kemal Atatürk said that it should be treated as a symbol of secularism. The Turkish Constitution Court allowed it, and the President Erdogan went there and opened with a fanfare, like Mr. Modi went here and opened it with a fanfare. I think judges must realize that these scars are better buried then open these scars and, allow these wounds to hurt people's sentiment today?
To come back to Justice Chandrachud, you therefore believe that there are, if I can use that colloquial phrase, two black marks at least to his judgments or his obiter dicta comments. First, the Ayodhya judgment, where bizarrely, after finding the demolition of the mosque an egregious violation of the law, the land on which the mosque stood was given to the party guilty of violating the law. That's one black mark, so to speak. And the other is this comment that he made about the Places of Worship Act, that you can determine their character. And as you said, that's opened a Pandora's box, which has sent shivers down the spine of the minority community. And earlier in this interview, you also spoke about how in political matters, he has not risen to levels expected of him. And you then compared him to Justice P.D. Desai and said that, in fact, he doesn't match up to Justice P.D. Desai. And you hoped that just as Justice Desai didn't give a damn about the executive, so too Justice Chandrachud would not give a damn about the executive's sensitivities and sensibilities. I thank you for those points, because I think whilst you have been in extraordinary praise of the intelligence and the great defense of human rights and the great stand against using arrest to punish that Justice Chandrachud has repeatedly taken, and that praise is well-deserved, I think it's also important that you should point out in all honesty to the audience that one apprehension that you have of Justice Chandrachud is that in politically sensitive matters, sometimes he doesn't stand up as is expected of him. The Ayodhya judgment was a bad judgment. That comment about Places of Worship Act has actually opened up a Pandora's box. I thank you for having given us a...
Let me tell you one thing, Karan, that, it's too early for us to judge what his tenure as Chief Justice will be. I have, placed many of the misgivings that I have, and I'm sure, he is aware of it also. One of the biggest challenges is delays in justice delivery system. And I have no doubt that that's something which he will address. I feel that we must wait and watch and meet again in November of 2024 to really give a final, verdict on how Chief Justice Dhananjay Chandrachud has been the 50th Chief Justice of India.
I accept that invitation gladly. It would be a pleasure to meet again in November 2024, I think you mean, to come up with a comprehensive opinion about how he has performed as a Chief Justice. But you have nonetheless alerted us to your own internal misgivings, which is the phrase you used. And I think that honesty is important because it will help people evaluate Justice Chandrachud alongside the extraordinary praise that he richly deserved. But it's important that we should know that there are certain apprehensions too. I thank you, Dushyant Dave.
I must add one thing. On a personal level, Justice Chandrachud and I share a lot of warmth. He has been very kind to me when I was president of the bar, and always encouraged me to come out with new ideas and implement them. So for me personally, I think that it is a great moment that a friend whom I have known for a long time is going to be the Chief Justice of India. But okay, I would still say that I must wait and watch my friend, how he is going to perform. But I wish him lots of good luck.
Thank you very much indeed. Take care. Look after yourself.